I stood in my newly renovated apartment, running my hand along the freshly painted wall. Everything was perfect, from the hardwood floors to the crystal chandelier in the dining room. At 27, I'd finally created the home I'd always dreamed of, thanks to my success at Morgan & Stanley Investment and, if I'm being honest, the inheritance from my father. My name is Emma, and my story isn't exactly a happy one. You see, today I'm hosting a housewarming party, and I've made the questionable decision to invite my half-sister, Sarah, and my mother. Just thinking about it makes my stomach turn. As I arranged appetizers on silver platters in my gleaming new kitchen, memories from childhood came flooding back. The constant torment from Sarah, my half-sister, who seemed to take pleasure in destroying everything I loved. I was 7 when she was born, the product of my mother's relationship with Tom, a man who never bothered to marry her but did manage to send child support checks every month. I remember the day I got my first art set for my 12th birthday, a gift from my father. I'd barely had it for 2 days when I found Sarah, then 5, dumping paint all over my bedroom carpet and using my expensive brushes to paint the walls. When I ran crying to Mom, she just shrugged it off. "She's just a baby, Emma. She doesn't know any better." But Sarah did know better. Like the time she took scissors to my favorite sweater, the one Dad bought me for Christmas. Or when she accidentally spilled juice all over my science project the night before it was due. Each incident was met with the same response from Mom: "Don't be so dramatic, Emma." The worst part wasn't even Sarah's behavior, it was Mom's complete inability to discipline her. While I had rules and consequences, Sarah seemed to live without either. Mom was too busy enjoying the comfortable life provided by alimony from both my father and Tom to actually parent. That's why at 14, I made the decision that changed everything. I moved in with my dad. I still remember Mom's face when I told her. She wasn't upset about losing me, she was furious about losing Dad's alimony payments. We didn't speak for years after that. Living with Dad was like finally being able to breathe. He encouraged my interest in finance, helped me with my homework, and showed me what it meant to be valued. When he passed away during my college years, it felt like losing my anchor. He left me his entire fortune, which gave me the freedom to pursue my dreams, but also made Sarah's jealousy even worse. The doorbell rang, and I felt my heart rate spike. The first guests were arriving, my aunt and uncle, thankfully, not my mother and sister yet. As I opened the door, genuine warmth spread through me at their excited exclamations over the apartment. Soon the place was filling up with friends and relatives, all of them admiring the modern kitchen with its marble countertops and the elegant living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows. Everyone was having a good time, drinking wine and sharing stories. Everything was perfect. The click of those stilettos got louder, and there they were, my mother in her usual overdressed glory, and Sarah, wearing a dress that looked like it was painted on. The party had been in full swing for over an hour, with soft jazz playing in the background and my guests engaged in pleasant conversation over wine and hors d'oeuvres. Just the kind of elegant, calm gathering I'd wanted. Sarah paused in the doorway, her nose wrinkling as she surveyed the scene. "Oh my God," she announced loudly, her voice cutting through the gentle murmur of conversation. "Is this a party or a nursing home social hour?" The room went silent. My Aunt Caroline stopped mid-sentence, wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. No one laughed at Sarah's joke. I felt heat rising to my cheeks, but forced myself to stay composed. Sarah strutted into the apartment she had visited many times. Now it was completely renovated but still holding those precious memories of Dad. I watched as she ran her hand along the new granite countertop in the kitchen, inspected the designer light fixtures, and peered into every room. The jealousy was written all over her face, I'd seen that expression too many times not to recognize it. Her eyes had that same gleam they'd had when Dad bought me my first car, or when he paid for my college tuition. Then she spun around, a smile spreading across her face that made my blood run cold. "This place is amazing, Emma. I've decided, I'm moving in next week." I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. But Sarah's smile didn't waver. "I'm serious," she said. This place is way too big for just you. And honestly, you owe me. You got everything from your dad, and what did I get? Nothing. Sarah, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice level, you're not moving in here. Ever. This is my home. Her face contorted with rage. You selfish bitch, she screamed, causing several of my guests to jump. You think you're so much better than everyone else because daddy left you all his money. You live in this fancy apartment while mom and I barely get by. I expected my mother to step in, to calm Sarah down or at least look embarrassed by her outburst. Instead, she stepped forward, arms crossed, and fixed me with an accusing stare. Emma, I can't believe how greedy you've become, she said, shaking her head. Would it kill you to help your sister? To give her a place to stay? After everything our family has been through? Our family? I repeated, my voice shaking. The family where you let Sarah torture me for years while you did nothing? That family? How dare you, my mother gasped. Come on, Sarah, we're leaving. Clearly, your sister cares more about her fancy apartment than her own family. Sarah stormed out, nearly knocking over a vase in the process. My mother followed, pausing at the door just long enough to give me a look of pure disappointment, the same look she'd given me when I chose to live with Dad. The door slammed behind them, and the apartment fell completely silent. Then, like a collective exhale, everyone seemed to relax at once. My Aunt Caroline came over and squeezed my hand, while others started quietly discussing what had just happened. Life returned to normal after the housewarming disaster. I threw myself into work, trying to forget about Sarah's outburst and Mom's accusations. Then, about a month after the party, my boss called me into his office. Emma, we need you to handle the Meridian contract personally, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. It's a big deal, 2 weeks in Phoenix to get everything sorted out. I nodded, already mentally preparing for the trip. Business travel was part of the job, and honestly, a couple of weeks away from the city, and any possibility of running into Sarah or Mom, sounded perfect. That evening, I sent Mom a quick message, heading to Phoenix for 2 weeks on business. Just FYI. I didn't expect much of a response, but the complete silence still stung a little. Ever since the party, she'd been giving me the cold shoulder, probably waiting for me to apologize. As if I had anything to apologize for. The 2 weeks in Phoenix were exhausting. Endless meetings, contract negotiations, and late-night document reviews. By the time I boarded my flight home, all I could think about was sinking into my comfortable couch with a glass of wine and finally relaxing in my peaceful apartment. The first sign something was wrong was the faint smell of stale alcohol and cigarettes in the hallway outside my door. My stomach clenched as I inserted my key, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found inside. It looked like a tornado had torn through my home. Empty bottles and cigarette butts littered the floor. The expensive white leather sofa was covered in what looked like wine stains and burn marks. My beautiful freshly painted walls were defaced with God knows what, food stains, drink splashes, and what looked suspiciously like intentional graffiti. My legs shaking, I moved through the destruction. The massive TV I'd just bought was smashed, shards of its screen scattered across the floor. In the kitchen, dirty dishes were piled in the sink, and something that looked like old takeout was growing mold on my marble countertops. But the worst was yet to come. When I pushed open my bedroom door, I found Sarah sprawled across my bed, still wearing her shoes, clearly passed out drunk. My pristine white bedding was stained with makeup and what looked like pizza sauce. The sight of her there, sleeping peacefully in the midst of all this destruction, made something snap inside me. I grabbed her shoulders and started shaking her. Wake up, what the hell have you done to my home? She swatted at me like I was an annoying fly, mumbling incoherently. Fine. I marched to the bathroom, filled a glass with cold water, and returned to throw it directly in her face. Sarah jolted awake, sputtering and cursing. What the hell is wrong with you? She screamed, mascara running down her face. Stop screaming and tell me how you got in here, I cut through Sarah's stream of curses. And what the hell have you done to my apartment? Sarah wiped her face with my Egyptian cotton pillowcase and had the audacity to roll her eyes. Mom gave me the spare key, she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Said I could stay here while you were gone. But this place was so boring, all fancy and perfect and completely dead. So I had some friends over. The spare key, of course. The memory hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd given Mom that key years ago, right after Dad died, and I inherited the apartment. Just in case of emergencies, she'd said. And now she'd handed it over to Sarah without even asking me. Some friends over? I gestured at the destruction around us. You've completely trashed my home. Look at this place, the walls, the furniture, my TV. Sarah shrugged, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. We had some parties. Got a little wild. What's the big deal? You're loaded, you can just buy new stuff. Get out. My voice was shaking. Get out of my apartment right now. No. She flopped back on my bed, scrolling through her phone. I like it here. Mom said I could stay, and I'm staying. Deal with it. I pulled out my phone and hit Mom's number on speed dial. She answered on the third ring. Get over here. Now. My voice was ice cold. Come see what your precious Sarah has done to my apartment. 28 minutes later, yes, I was counting, Mom walked through my front door. I watched her face as she took in the scene, the stained walls, the ruined furniture, the bottles and garbage everywhere. Her expression barely changed. This, I said, my arm sweeping across the devastation, is what your daughter did to my home. The home Dad left me. The home I just spent a fortune renovating. And you gave her the key? Without even asking me? Mom picked up an empty wine bottle, set it on a side table, and straightened a crooked picture frame. I don't see why you're so upset, she said, her voice maddeningly calm. So they had a few parties. You have more than enough money to fix everything. It's not like you can't afford it. I stared at her, speechless. In that moment, I finally understood something I should have realized years ago. She would always choose Sarah. No matter what Sarah did, no matter who she hurt, Mom would always defend her. Always justify her actions. Always expect me to be the one to give in, give up, give more. Take Sarah and get out, I said through clenched teeth. Both of you, leave my apartment right now. Mom settled herself onto my ruined sofa, brushing aside some cigarette butts. Actually, I think this might be good for both of you. Sarah needs a place to stay, and you've got all the space. You two living together could help repair your relationship. Repair our relationship? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She broke into my home and destroyed it. I didn't break in, Sarah snapped, now sprawled across my armchair. Mom gave me the key. Stop being so dramatic. A key she wasn't supposed to give you. I could feel my control slipping. This is my home, mine. Dad left it to me, not to you, not to Mom. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police. Sarah threw her head back and laughed. Mom joined in, both of them looking at me like I was a child making empty threats. Go ahead, Sarah taunted. Call them. What are you going to tell them? That your sister used a key to enter your apartment? That we had some parties? Boo-hoo. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Sarah's smirk faltered slightly as she realized I was actually doing it. 911, what's your emergency? I need police at 1542 Riverside Avenue, apartment 7B, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Someone's broken into my home and refuses to leave. Less than 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. 2 officers stood in the hallway, a tall man with graying hair and a younger woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. I'm Officer Martinez, this is Officer Chen, the woman said. We received a call about a break-in? I let them in, watching their eyes widen as they took in the state of my apartment. This is my home, I explained. I was away on business for 2 weeks. My mother gave my spare key to my sister without my permission, and she's been living here, throwing parties, and destroying my property. Now she refuses to leave. You stuck-up bitch. Sarah lunged toward me, but Officer Chen stepped between us. Ma'am, please calm down, she said to Sarah, who responded with a stream of profanity that would have made a sailor blush. You can't arrest me. This is my sister's fault for being a selfish, rich. The rest of her tirade was cut off as Officer Martinez began reading her rights. Sarah fought and screamed as they handcuffed her, threatening to sue everyone, calling me every name she could think of. How dare you? Mom jumped up, finally dropping her calm facade. Having your own sister arrested? You ungrateful, vile creature. I should have known you'd turn out just like your father, cold and heartless. She stormed out after the police, shouting that she was calling our family lawyer, leaving me alone in my destroyed apartment. I stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the wreckage of my beautiful home. The TV alone would cost thousands to replace. The walls would need to be completely repainted. The furniture. I walked around making notes on my phone, tallying up the damage. I could get an appraiser in here, document everything, take Sarah to court. I had more than enough evidence, and with her behavior in front of the police, no judge would side with her. But as I looked at the growing list on my phone, I realized something. I didn't want to. I didn't want to spend months or years in court battles with Sarah. I didn't want to see her face across a courtroom or hear her voice in depositions. I deleted the list and made a different call instead. 24/7 emergency locksmith, a gruff voice answered. Hi, I need all my locks changed immediately. It's an emergency. A week after the police incident, my phone lit up with Mom's name. I almost declined the call, but something made me answer. Emma, we need to talk, she said, her voice gentler than I'd heard it in weeks. Can we meet at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at noon? I think it's time we discussed everything that happened. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she'd finally realized how wrong she and Sarah had been. Maybe she was ready to apologize. Okay, I agreed. I'll be there. The next day, I arrived at the cafe right on time. Mom was already there, seated at a corner table with a spread of food in front of her, the most expensive items on the menu, lobster salad, truffle pasta, and a bottle of premium wine. I just asked for water. Emma, dear, Mom said, dabbing her lips with a napkin, we need to discuss the severe psychological trauma you've inflicted on your sister. I nearly choked on my water. Excuse me? Having Sarah arrested? Do you have any idea what that's done to her? She had to spend hours at the police station. Her friends all know about it. She's absolutely devastated. Mom shook her head sadly. The only way to make this right is to apologize and pay her compensation. $25,000 should cover the emotional distress. I sat there, stunned into silence for a moment. Then the words came tumbling out. Are you serious? Sarah broke into my home, threw wild parties, destroyed thousands of dollars worth of property, and you think I should pay her? Mom waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't be so materialistic, Emma. So she had a few parties? Broke a few things? You're rich, you can easily replace everything. The emotional damage you've caused her, though? That's not so easily fixed. She walked toward the door, then turned back with a smile that made my blood boil. Oh, and be a dear and take care of the bill. I know how much you enjoy showing off your wealth. I watched her leave, then looked at the table covered in expensive dishes she'd ordered. The waiter appeared with the check, and I could see Mom had even ordered several desserts to go. The bill was over $200 for a lunch she'd barely touched. I walked into my partially repaired apartment, kicked off my shoes, and sat down at my desk. The cafe encounter kept replaying in my mind, Mom's casual demand for $25,000, her complete dismissal of the damage Sarah had caused, the way she'd stuck me with the bill without a second thought. Just like she'd been doing for years. Opening my laptop, I pulled up my banking records. There it was, in black and white, $2,000 transferred to her account every month since Dad died. Plus all the utility bills I paid, the property taxes on her house, the endless stream of emergency expenses she always needed help with. It had started after Dad's funeral. Mom had shown up at my apartment, crying about how hard things were financially, how she couldn't make ends meet. "I'm too old to find a job now," she'd said. And with Sarah still in school, I'd felt guilty about all the years we hadn't spoken, about moving out to live with Dad. So I'd agreed to help. That help had turned into an endless drain. New appliances, when hers mysteriously broke down. Designer clothes, because she needed to maintain appearances. Home repairs that somehow always cost thousands. And through it all, she'd never once looked for work, never tried to become self-sufficient. Why would she? She had me, her personal ATM. I opened a new email and started typing. "Mom. After today's conversation, I've made an important decision. Effective immediately, I will no longer be sending you monthly payments or covering any of your bills. The financial support I provided was always meant to be temporary, not a permanent arrangement. It was my choice to help you, not my obligation. I've spent years trying to make up for choosing to live with Dad, trying to prove I was a good daughter by funding your lifestyle. That ends now. It's time for both you and Sarah to support yourselves. Do not contact me about money again. Emma." I hit send before I could second guess myself. Then I went into my bill pay account and canceled all the automatic payments to her utility companies. The phone rang less than 15 minutes after I sent the email. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again. Finally, I answered. "How dare you?" Mom's voice was shrill. "I am your mother. You have an obligation to take care of me. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By cutting me off without warning? You haven't done anything for me," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "You've taken and taken, and when I needed you to be a mother, when Sarah was destroying my home, when she was making my life miserable, you always chose her. Always demanded more from me while letting her do whatever she wanted. I raised you. I fed you. No, Dad raised me. From the time I was 14, he was the one who took care of me. You just lived off his alimony. And when that stopped, you found someone else to support you. Now it's time for you and Sarah to support yourselves. You ungrateful little." I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again, but I didn't answer. Instead, I blocked her number. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The messages started flooding in almost immediately after I blocked their phone numbers. First through WhatsApp, then Facebook, then Instagram, and even LinkedIn. Each one more desperate and angry than the last. "You're destroying this family," Mom wrote. "Hope you're happy being rich and alone," Sarah messaged. "Only a heartless person would abandon their mother and sister. You'll regret this when you need us." I blocked them on every platform, one by one, but they kept finding new ways to reach me. They even started messaging my friends, telling elaborate stories about how I'd abandoned them to poverty while living in luxury. I wasn't taking any chances with my security. I spoke with Frank, our building's concierge, explaining the situation. "My mother and sister aren't allowed up under any circumstances," I told him. "Even if they say it's an emergency." The very next evening, when I came home from work, Frank stopped me. "Ms. Thompson, your mother and sister were here about an hour ago. They tried to convince me they had your permission to go up. When I refused, your sister got quite vocal. I had to threaten to call security before they left. I thanked him and increased his Christmas bonus on the spot." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into renovating my apartment again. New furniture, fresh paint, replaced TV. I erased every trace of Sarah's destruction, every reminder of that nightmare. But something felt different now. This place that had once been my sanctuary, my connection to Dad, felt tainted. Through the family grapevine, I heard stories. Mom and Sarah were struggling financially, bouncing from relative to relative, asking for loans they'd never repay. They were telling everyone who would listen about how I'd cruelly cut them off, conveniently leaving out the part about breaking into my home or demanding compensation for being arrested. I ran into Mom a few times in the neighborhood. It was inevitable, given how close she lived. She'd try to corner me, alternating between angry demands and tearful pleas. "Emma, please, can we just talk? We're family." I'd walk past without a word, my heels clicking on the pavement, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. Last week, I found myself looking at real estate listings. Modern condos in different neighborhoods, secure buildings with strict access policies. Places where I could truly start fresh, without the constant anxiety of running into them or wondering if they'd try to break in again. Dad's apartment had been my home for so long. It held so many memories, homework sessions at the kitchen table, Sunday morning pancakes, long talks about my future. But maybe it was time to let it go. I bookmarked a listing for a penthouse in a new development across town. The building had 24-hour security, private elevator access, and a stunning view of the city. More importantly, it represented something I'd been seeking my whole life without realizing it: true independence. A clean slate. Tomorrow, I'm going to call the realtor. It's time for a fresh start, one that's truly my own.